Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Welcome to the third session of Atmabodha. I welcome all the new participants, people who have newly joined in. We are studying self-knowledge, Atmabodha, which is a Vedantic text written by Adi Shankaracharya. And we are following Swami Nikhilanandji's translation and commentary. I think most of you have the text with you. In the last session, we discussed Adhyas. We were introduced to Adhyas, the theory of superimposition. So today we will just recapitulate a few points before we proceed with the text. Adhyas is the most important subject matter in Advait Vedanta. Its importance lies in the fact that it is not a metaphysical abstraction or a philosophical abstraction. It is an actual event in our everyday life, a dynamic event which any one of us experience all the time almost. And this is what makes it so easy for us to understand. At the same time, if it is not pointed out, it's so obvious that we miss it. This is the nature of Adhyas. And that is why in all Vedantic texts, again and again, the concept of avidya, ajnan is introduced, Adhyas is introduced, and that is why it is shown, it is repeated that the way out is through knowledge. Because the actual problem is ignorance. Our bondage is of the nature of ignorance, not knowing who we are, and as if that was not bad enough, we know ourselves wrongly. We know ourselves to be body and mind. So this knowledge, this understanding, it's actually a kind of, it's an error, it's an aberration. And Adhyas, by understanding how this superimposition takes place, how this mistaken identity takes place, they are leading us out of this error into the knowledge of our true being, which is the self, which is called the Atman. So unless we feel the truth of Adhyas right here, I am not going to proceed, because Vedanta is like that. It's entirely a first person understanding through a first person experience. And Adhyas has to be understood in our own system. See, right now you can understand it. Let me just give you an example. Our body does not say I. Please see this. The physical system, it's functioning independent of your will. Our heart does not take our permission to beat. The lungs are not functioning with our permission. It's an instrument which is functioning by itself. It does not say I, but I say I am the body. What does this mean? The body does not say I, but I can say I am the body, I am the mind. The mind also, watch and see your thought process. It is going on. It does not say I, but you say I am my mind, I am these thoughts. So what is happening is there is a kind of mixture between I, the Chaitanya, the conscious entity, and the body mind, which are actually your instruments, which are actually objective to your experience, which are non-self-luminous, which means not self-conscious by themselves. But I somehow mix up these two. How we manage to do this is a real mystery, because Adhyas is, you can say something, a fantastic mystery. If you actually observe it for all that it is, how do I manage to superimpose this I sense on my instrumentation, which is clearly objective to my experience? I experience the body as an object. I experience the mind, my thoughts, emotions, everything objectively. You see, you can watch your mind. You can watch your thoughts. When thoughts are absent, still you remain over, watching the absence of thought, which means you are always there. Mind is an object of your perception, body is an object of your perception. But how do we then say, I am the body and mind? How do we manage to confuse the I sense with these two? And because we assume that I am the body and mind, the rest follows. Then obviously whatever matters to the body and mind is again mine, it's I. Sri Ramakrishna summed it up very beautifully. He used to say, me and mine, this is ignorance. The wrongly misplaced I and all its, everything that clings to it, all its attributes, all this together constitute ignorance. And the starting point of ignorance is this adhyas, this strange phenomenon in our buddhi, which superimposes consciousness on something which is jada, non-conscious, non-self-luminous by itself, which is an instrument in your hands. Somehow we mix up these two. Right now it is happening. Please check and see. And that is why Advaita Vedanta starts with this, that because this is happening, in a strange way, you are mixing up the object and the subject, the unreal and the real, in a strange way. You cannot explain how. Because this is happening, so naturally, your understanding is aberrated, confused. And as a result, you are not perceiving reality as it is. You are perceiving it as it appears to be. You just check your mind and see. The psychological process in your mind is usually dominant. So the existential thing, the existential reality of your being has vanished. As long as the psychological drama dominates our mind, we miss out the fact of awareness. Even this adhyas can appear like some kind of an abstraction if the mind is not clear enough. If it's crystal clear, this is it's a dynamic event in our everyday experience, adhyas. And that's why it is showing you your exact position of bondage. So it is very important to understand how our ignorance begins, how adhyas begins in our own system. It contradicts the first person perspective, the first person experience. You see, I always experience myself as being first, fundamentally. In that awareness, there is a thought process, and I may or may not identify with those thoughts. But what do? Due to adhyas, I assume I am verily what is happening in my mind. I am verily those thoughts. If a nice thought comes, well, I'm happy. If a depressive thought comes, well, I'm very sad. If an angry thought comes, I am angry. So all this is happening continuously because of the simple fact the I has been superimposed or invested in the thought process, in the mind. And similarly in the body also, and hence the world of objects, the things we have collected around us, these go to define our so-called sense of identity. Because fundamentally the sense of identity has not been explored, investigated. So adhyas creates the rest of all our problems. Sri Ramakrishna, very beautifully he summed up by saying that, you see, ami amar, me and mine, this is ignorance. And what happens as a result of this? A man collects his upadhis and holds it dear to himself. Upadhi means a limiting adjunct. The conditioning, which actually we sometimes take pride in. So he collects all this, it gives him a solid sense of identity, and he functions through that identity. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that you just give a man a pen and a paper and he will start writing something. For the simple reason that we are objective, the nature of the mind is very objective. The senses are turned totally outward. So our method of functioning is all objective. So Vedanta is trying to reverse this process a bit. Just by telling you, check your own experience just now and see. Is thought more dominant or is awareness more true? in your own experience. If you check this in a very still, calm, meditative state of mind, you will see whether there is thought or no thought, you are aware. That is why you can feel the presence of thought as well as the absence of thought. You can catch both these states. So whether you will identify with a thought or you will not, whether you will identify with the body or you will not, it's as per your will. You are fundamentally awareness. Mind comes next. And you have the choice to identify with the mental processes or not. And body consciousness comes after that. Again, it's a matter of your choice. This is how the human mechanism is made. This is how it is functioning. But without understanding this basic concept of adhyas, we will not understand our ignorance. And if we don't understand our ignorance, obviously, we are not going to search for mukti, liberation. It will not mean anything to you unless you grasp this concept of adhyas. That's why I'm dwelling upon it all the more. And Shankaracharya gives the greatest emphasis on this in many of his works. So let us be very clear about this concept of adhyas. It is a mysterious phenomenon that has happened. Now we have to find our way out of it. Let us first acknowledge its existence. By definition, as I told you in the last session, it is the combination of truth and falsehood. That is what is adhyas. Satya, Anrita, Mithuni, Karanam, adhyasa. And superimposing something on something where it should not be, we are superimposing it there. Like the eye sense is being superimposed on the body and the mind. So this is the nature of adhyas. It misleads us. It is the cause for this error, misperception, misapprehension, due to which we are not able to overcome our ignorance. So this is how adhyas is introduced. And once we have a good grasp over this adhyas concept, then we will proceed with what Shankaracharya tells us in the 6th verse, because he proceeds with this fundamental understanding, knowledge of adhyas. He says, Sansara swapna tulyo hi ragadveshadi sankulaha swakale satyavad bhati prabodhe sati asad bhavet. The world filled with attachments and aversions and the rest is like a dream. It appears to be real as long as one is ignorant, but becomes unreal when one is awake. What is he trying to tell us? As long as we are in ignorance, the psychological reality filled with attachments and aversions is going to dominate. We have no clue to our true nature. But if this ignorance is removed, what was always present will shine forth. See, this is repeated in Vedantic texts like Atmabodha, just like the sun, which is covered by clouds. You don't recreate a sun or you don't rediscover the sun. It was always there. It was covered up by clouds. Now you remove the clouds and the sun is there. So since we are any studies from the standpoint of the mind and its psychological, you can say, waves, that covers up the reality of awareness. And that is why adhyas occurs. So if we can clear this mind, you will see the ever-present existential reality. Just remove the mind, stop the mind, or at least stall the mind. This is what meditative practice is about. So by doing that, what happens is naturally you are clearing your way to existential awareness, the ever-present fact of your being, what is called the Atman. So this is the simple process given to us, but as you can see, it is not as simple as that. It requires some amount of discipline. It is easy to understand. It is difficult to do. Somebody put a very nice question to me, which I will answer in the Q&A session, that it is a fact that this is a very appealing thing. It's pretty obvious to our intellect, but to attain that state requires a certain amount of real practice. And that is why, In all of these works of Shankaracharya, he effectively combines the praxis along with the theory. Later on, he is going to do this in this text also. He is going to tell us it is meditation, repeated meditation, that is going to kindle this knowledge, Atmabodha. He combines the methods of meditation many times. He uses yoga, yogic meditations. He combines this in Vedantic texts for the simple reason a method of discovering the self or penetrating deep into our true being is required. A praxis, a daily practice is required. And that is why in Vedantic texts, which deal with existential reality alone, there also you will find meditative practices included. So the path is very clear. This is what is required to be done. Brahman is not another object, the ultimate reality of pure being or pure awareness, consciousness, whatever we are calling it. It is not another object. It is the supreme subject. If I train this instrumentation, the body-mind complex, which is actually objective to my being, then I will be able to reunite with my true being, rediscover my true identity as pure awareness alone. This is a possibility provided this instrumentation is trained. Then just an insight, just pure knowledge is enough to help us attain that state, attain to that realization. So this is what is being described in Atmabodha. Further on, let us make one more thing clear here. Whenever we use the word Atmabodha or Brahmagnan, it is quite likely that we may think that within this body is the mind and somewhere within that is the Atman. You know, all such concepts, people, when they first hear of the Atman, they have such ideas. But the actual fact is, it is in your awareness that there is the thought process. Through your thought, you experience the body. So the truth is actually not that the Atman is within you. The body-mind is appearing in your awareness. Check and see just now. This is no theory. It is because you're aware. Thoughts mean something to you. They become conscious thoughts. They become like experiences for you. And through that thought process, you are experiencing the body and the world of objects, the universe around you. So then how will this research be? You are only going to experience Brahman as pure, crystal clear awareness in your system. Because this appears, because this is self-conscious, self-luminous by itself. So it is called consciousness. So you will only discover Brahman as awareness, pure awareness. And hence, Vedanta gives us techniques to unravel this awareness. Or in other words, in the yogic system, we use terms like cultivating awareness, enhancing awareness. We do this because we are talking from the standpoint of the mind. There is no cultivating awareness actually. It is just uncovering the fact of pure awareness, unraveling awareness. And that can only happen if the mind is trained to turn inward and remain there for a long time. Until then, to say that the world is unreal or, well, this doesn't work. For the simple reason, you are engaged in the psychological reality. Existential reality has no place there. So through a process, we can come into this knowledge which they are speaking of. So this he will be telling us in the next verse. Let us go into the next verse. Tavat satyam jagad bhati shuktika rajatam yatha yavanna jnayate brahma sarvadhishtanam advayam. The world appears to be real as long as the non-dual Brahman, which is the basis of all, is not known. It is like the illusion of silver in an oyster shell. See, the world appears to be real as long as Brahman is not known, he says. This is very clear. The fact is this: as long as awareness is not intuited, the psychological reality and all that follows will dominate the mind. As he says, like it's almost like an illusion, like seeing silver in an oyster shell. Suppose you were on a walk on the beach and it was dusk and you were strolling, enjoying the beautiful breeze and the sound of the waves which were coming down. And then it was twilight hour and the sun had set, the moon was up, and in such a beautiful, surreal atmosphere all around you, you suddenly saw something gleaming in the sand in front of you. You went closer and it appeared like, you see, when you walk in Indian beaches, it's quite natural that you may confuse the gleam for something like silver, because people do wear silver ornaments here. So a bit of silver might have fallen. It appears like that. But if you go closer, you take that into your hand, and maybe you have your mobile phone in your pocket and you remove that and put your torchlight on that, and you see, oh, it's not silver. It's an oyster shell. The shell was gleaming in the moonlight, and that glitter, it appeared like silver. So what he's telling us is that it's an appearance of silver, but there's a substratum of reality as the oyster shell. When does it appear as silver? When there is insufficient light, when there is some amount of confusion in our brain. So what is the light in our own system? Now apply this whole thing to your own system. When does confusion, adhyas, occur in our minds? When there is insufficient awareness. Awareness is like light. So the light that you are going to throw on the oyster shell and discover that it is a shell and it's not silver, is you are going to enhance your awareness. You're going to augment your awareness, and you are going to subdue the thought process so that you understand the substratum of thought is awareness. It is always there. I didn't notice it. When you clear this arena, you will see that it is there. So you superimpose, in the state of confusion, you superimpose silver upon the shell. In the state of adhyas, mental confusion, you superimpose mind on awareness. Body and mind, both on awareness. And you think that is I. So this is what is happening. Shankaracharya keeps on giving illustrations like this, very beautiful examples, to show the reality, the fact of adhyas in our lives. It contradicts your first person experience, but this is Maya. You don't mind it. You don't mind the contradiction. If you just observe it as it is, you will see that it is a fact that I, the subject, am seeing body-mind complex as objects. But how do I manage to identify with them? It is just like, because of insufficient light, I managed to identify a bit of shell with silver. So the whole solution to this problem lies in throwing more light on the matter and discovering the fact of your true being by throwing more light, by enhancing your awareness. See, perception, you will only know what you are able to perceive, and perception entirely depends on the clarity of your thought process. So the way is being repeatedly told to us. Now we have to adopt techniques, methods in order to practically do this. Because unless you do it in your system, I'm telling you, this will just remain another thought. For many people, even awareness is a thought. Although that is the truth about you, your own being, it can remain as a thought if you have not gone beyond thought, if you have not stopped thought effectively in a totally conscious state of mind. So some method of meditation, whether I call it yoga, whether you call it vipassana, Any method which will bring you naturally into this state is to be adopted. Remember, the practice and the study go together. If there is no practice, after some time the study will have no value. Just like a cloud gets blown away by the wind, the thoughts of Vedanta will get blown away from your mind. And then we keep asking, well, how to experience this? So everyday practice based on this is very, very important. Having said this, let me also discuss one more point here. Vivekananda says, what exactly is realization? It is perception, but perception beyond the senses. Perception of the truth of your being, but it is something beyond the senses. It is, he calls it super sensory, super sensuous, super conscious. And all the training is for these senses and mind so that they turn inward and are able to catch the reality of awareness right within you, which is ever present, which is the reality of your being. So in order to achieve this level of perception, he used to call it direct perception. Pratyaksha is the word he uses. We also call it aparokshanubhuti in Vedanta, for the simple reason is it is unmediated knowledge. It is not mediated by your senses and mind. Please see, every form of knowledge, every vritti gnan, what we say, is mediated by your senses and mind. But this is knowledge of the subject. Who is actually making the mind and senses conscious? So it is far beyond the mind. So how can these function as mediators for that knowledge? The senses and the mind cannot mediate in this knowledge. So it is unmediated. It is of the nature of direct intuition, a direct insight into the heart of reality. But to get that, considerable discipline of body and mind is required. The actual practice of yoga is required. A yogi naturally enters into this state of pure being, which is being described. And then it will be, one is able to clear the illusion of wrong perception. Standing on the vantage point of pure being, one is able to clear the illusion of wrong perception. And that is why this knowledge is held to be most dear. Again, let me repeat what Bhagavad Gita says, because we consider Bhagavad Gita to be the essence of the Upanishads. There it is said, Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate. There is nothing more purifying than knowledge. But who understands this? Tat swayam yoga samsiddha kalena atmani vindati. One who has attained the very heights of yoga, who has been purified by yoga completely, he understands the value of knowledge. So practice is paramount, most important in this path. Otherwise, even the intuition, the understanding of the real, what is real, will not come clearly into our minds. We are happy with our confusion. It will be like that. In Vedanta, the definition of reality, okay, let me just introduce this to you. This is important to know. As we proceed, we will require this. How do you define what is real? Real is that which is unchanging. Real is that which is eternal. And real is that which is self-luminous, which means conscious by itself. It is not functioning on borrowed consciousness. So these qualities only belong to the Atman. Do they belong to the mind? Check and see. Of course not. Mind is ever changing. You can stop it. And it is functioning on borrowed consciousness, because you can be conscious as well as unconscious. So consciousness is not its property, it is borrowed. Behind mind is a unit of pure consciousness which gets mixed up with the mind due to this adhyas. So we are not able to differentiate between the two. This is what is called Moola Avidya, the original confusion, the original superimposition, which occurs when you are not able to differentiate mind and awareness. So again, there are techniques, processes to help us achieve this. The actual whole thing about Vedanta is the practice. To be able to do this in our own system, and then all this falls in place, becomes very clear. These are not mere ideas. These are outpourings of men of realization. See, when we were novices in our training center, one Mataji had given me a very good advice. She told me that in the period of sadhana, you must only study works of people who have had realization, the works of realized souls, because their words, their even a simple phrase, their turns of thought, they are absolutely authentic, and they will lead your mind towards the state they themselves are in. So Shankaracharya's works are like this. Vivekananda's works are like this. They will lead you directly into reality. To get this direct perception, you just have to follow them in toto. And that is why works like this, Atmabodha, are very important. Crucial to, in fact, I would say, our understanding and our spiritual progress. So, with this, let us now go into the next verse, where he further dives into the nature of Brahman and how we manage to misunderstand this. Sachidatmani anusyute nitye Vishnu prakalpitaha vyaktayo vividha sarva hatake katakadivat. All the various forms exist in the imagination of the perceiver, the substratum being the eternal and all-pervading Vishnu, whose nature is existence and intelligence. Names and forms are like bangles and bracelets, and Vishnu is like gold. So this is a very, very beautiful, profound observation. See, he's come to the last point of Vedanta, where he says that it is one Vishnu. Vishnu itself means the all-pervading reality of existence. This appears in the form of this manifold universe. These names and forms are superimposed on that reality, and that is how they get their reality. But the fact of it all is Vishnu, the all-pervading Brahman. Is another name for Brahman, because he says Vishnu is verily existence and intelligence, and the rest are names and forms superimposed on that. So you see, according to Vedanta, where does God reside? He is everywhere. And where do I find him? You must start with finding him in yourself, and then you will perceive him everywhere. There is a beautiful story, in the Puranas. The Puranas have nice stories. Some Vedantic truth, based on that, they will have a nice story so that we are able to understand the concept better. So in this story, it so happened that once in the heavens, which are called Swarga in Sanskrit, so there was a kind of war between the Devas and the Asuras. The Devas are the lesser gods with the small g, not the capital G. They are not God. They are the lesser gods who are each in charge of an element. Like Vayu is in charge of wind, and Agni is in charge of fire. So these Devas, the gods, and the Asuras, they had a battle. And in this battle, the Asuras won. They emerged victorious, and the Devas were driven out of the heavens. Now, this is a strange situation. Usually the Devas win. But here, this time the Asuras had won, and the Devas were vanquished. And it so happened that this news went around everywhere in all the lokas, all the different planes of existence. And the creator of this universe, who is Lord Brahma, this is how it is seen in the Puranas, and the preserver of this universe, who is Lord Vishnu, and the destroyer of the universe, who is Lord Shiva, these three, they came together and they discussed, now what would happen if the Asuras came after us? They have already vanquished all the devas. And what if they attack Vaikuntha or Kailash? And what do we do? And then Vishnu said, you see, they are impossible to beat because they are now the masters of the elements. So you can't hide in a forest, you can't hide in space, and they are quite familiar with all the different lokas. So then where exactly do I hide in case they come to Vaikuntha? Then Brahmaji had an idea. He said, look, there is one place where you can hide, where all of us can hide actually. You know, we can hide in the heart of the Asura king because he never looks within. He is all objective. His senses and mind are only turned outward. He never looks within himself. So that's a splendid place to hide his own heart. And so the story goes that Vishnu went and hid in the heart of the Asura king. And the king never realized where Vishnu was. And they searched all the different planes of existence, all the different lokas, and ransacked Vaikuntha and did all sorts of things. But they could not find Vishnu because he remained hidden in their own hearts. The story is telling us, where will you find God? Vishnu, you will find him in your own heart. If you turn the senses and mind inward. This is the story format of Paranchikani Vyatrinat Swayambhu Tasmat Paran Pashyati Nantaratman Kaschid Dhira Pratyagatmana Maikshat Avrita Chakshu Amritatvam. The Upanishad says that the senses and mind of the human being are turned outward, and that's why he is sensitive only to the external. But some intelligent, wise man of very stable mind turned his mind inward, his intelligence inward, and there he could intuit the immortal one. He himself became immortal by intuiting the immortal one. So this understanding that essentially Brahman is our own, you are going to experience him only as pure awareness in your own being. It is not another entity somewhere or another concept. Since you are going to experience him like this, experience it like this, better to be practical means to train this body-mind system to turn inward. Once you intuit his real nature, you will find it's the same consciousness which is manifesting all over in different names and forms. The same consciousness which is the heart of my being, which is making my mind conscious from within, which enlivens this body-mind complex. That same consciousness is in every body, animating every body, making conscious every mind. So you, in fact, are me in another form, Vedantically speaking. I am you in another form, with another name. That's all. Names and forms are the superimpositions. The content is the same. In Sri Ramakrishna's life, you find the most beautiful illustration of this. You know, every day, Sri Ramakrishna would go into Samadhi, and when he would come out of that Samadhi state, the recorder of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna has recorded these very precious moments when the mind emerges from Samadhi. How does he see the universe? He says, I see that he alone has become all this. He alone is these trees. These trees are verily him alone. These houses, these people, it's all he. And then he gives a splendid example. He says, like a wax garden, a garden made entirely of wax. There you will find the trees, the trunk is made of wax, the leaves are made of wax, the fruits are made of wax. So also, what is that wax? That wax is divine consciousness, Brahman, this entire manifested universe, which is laid out so beautifully in front of us, which gives so much happiness to our being. This is nothing but him in different forms under different names. This was the perception of Sri Ramakrishna just when he was out of Samadhi. You will find this in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And so Sri Ramakrishna would always say, Tini sob hoyechen. He only has become everything. He is verily everything. When you reach the roof, you find that out of which the roof is made, the same concrete, the same brick dust, the same thing was used to make everything. The ladder which took you to the roof, the ground, same stuff. So this understanding comes as a result of the realization of pure being, Brahman, existence, consciousness, bliss itself. Then alone we will be able to say what the nature of the world is like, what the universe is like. Otherwise, you are only interpreting it through the lens of your mind, which is already jaded. So it is required to have this inner yogic perception to understand things as they are, reality as it is, which is ever present, which we are not able to see because of the clouds in our mind. So that is why we mistake. You see, the example he gives here is very beautiful. You are seeing only the bangle, he says. You don't see the gold. Vishnu is verily that gold, but you are seeing only the bangle. See, when you see an ornament, a piece of ornament, say a bangle. This is a famous example which comes in the Chandogya Upanishad, the story of Shvetaketu. And it's a very beautiful example because you understand the essential points of Vedanta through this. When you see a bangle, you only see it as something which is adorning your hand. You don't see it as gold. You only see how it is made, the intricate carving on it, the price. You will see all this, but you don't see what it is made up of. So this is the fundamental mistake. Actually, the bangle, there is nothing called a bangle apart from gold. See it for what it is. It is gold with a name and a form and a function. You're wearing it. That's all. But it is nothing apart. A bangle has no identity apart from gold. So to be able to see that gold is the essential thing. And then you can use the bangle. This is so beautifully illustrated in the story of Shvetaketu that I can't resist going a bit into the story. I'm not going to go into the entire story, but this portion, it's really magnificent how logically it has been presented in that story. See, Shvetaketu was the son of a rishi called Uddalak. And he was a great rishi and he wanted his son to be greater than him. So he sent him to a rishi who was a very good teacher in those times. And for 12 long years, Shvetaketu studied under that rishi. And he studied the Vedas, the Upanishads, whatever was available at that time, the Vedangas. And after 12 years, now he's a man of great learning and bright, very intelligent, very capable. So he comes back home. He comes to and bows down to his father. The father is very proud. And he's so happy that now Shvetaketu is back. He notices that his son is indeed now a man of great learning. But unfortunately, he notices a little pride in that boy. Now, Vidya Dadati Vinayam, we say in Sanskrit. The very nature of knowledge is, it makes you humble because it makes you non-self-conscious. It makes you unself-conscious. That is the nature of knowledge. It makes you, in a sense, impersonal. So how can there be pride? But this boy bears some amount of pride and lack of humility. So the father is concerned. One day he calls Shvetaketu to him and says, look, my son, you have learned a lot, but have you learned that one thing, knowing which everything else in this manifest universe is known? Even as by knowing this lump of clay, and he lifts up a handful of clay from the ground, he shows it to Shvetaketu and says, just by knowing this lump of clay, as I can know everything that this clay is made up of. Suppose you make a pot out of that clay or a jar, you can know what it essentially is by knowing this lump of clay. So also do you know that one thing, one substratum of this universe, knowing which You know everything else because it is nothing but a manifestation, a name and form given to that one substance. So do you know that one thing, one essential substance which manifests as life? Shvetaketu says, no, father, I have not heard anything like this. My teachers didn't teach me anything like this. Then, but he is interested. So the father says, look, my son, let me explain this to you. He says, look at this pot. What is a pot? It is nothing but something made out of clay. Is there anything called a pot apart from clay? Is there anything called a pot apart from clay? There isn't. It is name and form given to a pot, given to clay for one particular function. So just as there is nothing called a pot apart from clay, there is nothing called a wave apart from water, there is nothing called a bangle or bracelet apart from gold, there is nothing called you apart from consciousness. Just like how the pot was just a name and form given to clay, you are name and form given to consciousness. The essential thing about you, your content, the unchanging reality about you is consciousness. What appears as your persona is name and form superimposed on that consciousness. That is why persona has a very significant meaning. Persona itself means mask. So when we say personality, we don't know what we are saying. It's nothing permanent. It's a mask you're wearing. When you wear a mask, you must also be able to put it aside and dwell as you truly are. So the Vedantic knowledge helps you do it. And Uddalak is telling this to Shvetaketu that, look, my son, there is nothing called pot apart from clay. So also there is nothing called a bangle apart from gold. And likewise, there is nothing called you apart from consciousness. So I can very well say the pot is an appearance of clay. I can say the bangle is an appearance of gold. I can say this to everything. You know, color is an appearance of electromagnetic radiation, isn't it? So also you are an appearance in Brahman. You are an appearance of Brahman alone. That is the reality about you. And not this personality, this name and form, these superimposed attributes, what are called upadhis. These are not your real nature. This is not essentially you. You are that unchanging consciousness which manifests through all these, which makes the mind conscious. And hence you have conscious experiences. It makes the body, enlivens the body. You feel you are this personality. But you are only that unchanging, pure consciousness, what is called the Atman. This is the essential you. Even as the essential nature of the bangle is gold, and there is nothing called a bangle apart from gold. So this is what is being said here. Shvetaketu's story is quite long, considerably long, but Shvetaketu's story, we will not go into the entire story. We will go into just a bit of it as required for our understanding of Atmabodha here. So it goes on for with many more examples, but I will stop the story here. We will again take it up when the context arises. So this is how Shankaracharya is explaining Atmabodha. Today we are also going to take up the question answer. There are two questions which have been given to me, but I will take that up in the last 5 minutes because the answers are quite small to that, and I will continue with this for till 9:55. So with this understanding of this particular verse, we will now slowly move on to the next verse where the concept of upadhi is introduced to us. This is also very, very, very important in Vedanta to understand what exactly upadhi means so that we understand how we are managing to consider ourselves to be what we are not. How we manage to identify ourselves with these attributes, with our upadhis, and remain content with that. This is the magic of upadhi. It is all part of Maya, you will see. Let's go into the verse direct, the 9th verse. Yatha kasho rishikesho nanopadhi gato vibhuhu tad bhedad bhinnavad bhati tan nashe kevalo bhavet. As the all-pervading Akash appears to be diverse on account of its association with various upadhis, which are different from each other, and becomes one on the destruction of the upadhis, so also the omnipresent Lord appears to be diverse on account of his association with various upadhis and becomes one on the destruction of these upadhis. So the definition of upadhi has to be understood. This very Brahman, when he becomes, we say upadhi yukta, joined with upadhis, he appears in a particular manifestation. He appears with particular names and forms. It is all due to his combination with upadhis. See, the very definition of Ishwara, God, is he may be sagun, he may have attributes, but he is not mayadhin. He is mayadhish. He is beyond maya, which means he is not limited by his upadhis. He may assume upadhis, but he is not limited by them. He is far beyond them, and he is aware of himself as being far beyond them. That is why he is God. Whereas we, the jiva, we stick to our upadhis. We take pride in our bondage. That's why we are mayadhin. We are under maya. As long as we don't touch the reality of Brahman within us, what else will you do? You take pride in your upadhis. Nothing else is being perceived. So we don't mind. We don't mind our bondage. So this is the difference between Jiva and Brahman. But the good news is that it is Brahman who is insinuating as the Jiva. Your very nature is Brahman. So at some point in our life, definitely this awakening will come into us that my own real nature is pure awareness, that Brahman. And I'm falsely identified with this body-mind complex, which never says I, but I impose my Chaitanya, my sense of I on this, and manage to somehow declare myself to be this particular personality. So this is entirely my doing. You know, consciousness and bliss are your very nature. Confusion and sorrow are your doing, your making. Because of the lack of Vedantic thought, lack of this inner investigation, inner penetration. This is the great contribution of this spiritual heritage, that it introduces you to yourself, to your true being, so that you can experience life in full. You don't experience it in bits and pieces. You don't experience it in its illusory state. You experience it fully as it is. For this knowledge is imperative, crucial, very much required to experience life in full, because life is nothing but the manifestation of consciousness through this body-mind complex. Isn't it? How will I manifest that life fully if I have not touched its source? That is why Vedanta is, I always say, it is not another philosophy, a thought construct. It is the existing state of things, existing reality. Existential reality is a very good definition for all these eternal verities like Atman, Brahman. It is existential fact of life. And I must learn to put aside what I am not in order to arrive at what I truly am. So here in this particular verse, he brings us to the idea of upadhi, dawning which even God is seen to assume different forms, different attributes, different names, but he is always aware of who he is while we are not. So we will study upadhi a bit. Let me just introduce the definition and I'll go into the Q&A. We can continue in the next class. See, the definition of upadhi is very interesting. Upasamipe sthitva sviyan gunan anyatra adadhati iti upadhi, which means staying near one thing, that which has the ability to transfer its property to another. That is an upadhi. For example, you place a crystal on a blue, say, cloth, it acquires a blue color. You place your mind in the midst of all that you have collected around you, it will gain that color. This is how upadhi works on us. You see, we are totally identified with our name, our form, our qualifications, our family. We are totally identified with our possessions, with our home, with our cars, with our job. We are absolutely identified with our research, with our intellect, with our awards. These are all upadhis according to Vedanta. Upadhi, to a bhogi, one who is in search of experience, it is a qualifying attribute. But to a yogi, a man who's after liberation, it is a limiting adjunct, a conditioning adjunct to be got rid of, because that is not your true nature. With this introduction to Upadhi, I will stop today's session here and take up the question answers which have been handed over to me. And we will continue with the concept of Upadhi and this verse in the next class, which will be next Saturday. So the questions are very good. I'll just answer two here. The third one I have already answered privately because it was sent to me on my phone. The first question here is, the questioner says he wants a method of meditation because intellectual understanding and realization are two different things, and so he wants to experience this and hence a method of meditation. So this is a very good question. First of all, let us get this ability to understand. Intellectual understanding is of the nature of super refined vritti jnana. It will not take you to this reality. Transcending mind is the only way to arrive at pure being. You can use these thoughts as tools to go there, but finally it's a kind of a intuitive leap, you can say, into the heart of reality, which can only come through grace. We must keep this equipment ready to enter into that state. That is required of us. So for this to happen, meditation is absolutely required. So it's a very good, very valid question, because meditation is the sanest state of existence. Our normal existence is the state when your mind is seeking its source. Isn't it? It's everyone's experience that meditation is the state to be aimed at. So for a simple method, I had given a small meditation in IIT. So that has been made into a separate video, and it's all around on YouTube. It's very high in circulation actually. So you can draw from that if you want. It's a very simple 5-minute meditation, which I framed only for IIT students because they are very short of time. You can extend that meditation also, but I would seriously recommend that for very serious spiritual aspirants, it is not enough to just try meditations available on YouTube. It is important to get initiated into a process. I will recommend Diksha to you. Please take spiritual initiation. Most of the audience of this class, Atmabodha, I think you are from the United States. So there are a number of Vedanta societies. Please get into touch with one and take spiritual initiation. Diksha is very important for progress in spiritual life because it adds on to your own power of moving ahead. The Guru Shakti provides you with extra power, extra support. And the actual method of meditation, the Upasana, will be taught to you. So you have an everyday practice ready at hand. Everyday basis what you do in terms of meditation is very important, paramount to your spiritual progress. So this is the way to practice. Start with Diksha. And another thing which I would like to tell you is not just meditation once a week or occasionally when you feel like it. Every day devoting a few minutes to this kind of a practice is very important. Make it part and parcel of your life. We usually suggest the Sandhya times, dawn and dusk, at least 5-10 minutes of deep stillness and quietness. And introducing something like a small reading of scripture or something like that, puja, something like this for a short time every day in your own homes, so that the meditative mood prevails throughout the day, not just in those dawn and dusk periods, not just at that time. Throughout the day, a kind of sattvic, good ambience around you. This is required. So try to do this and you will find that meditation leads you more and more into this knowledge. The second question which I received is, it says, she actually wants the meanings of what was discussed in the first class, Vivek, Vairagya, Shat Sampatti, Mumukshutva, the meanings of these. So the meanings are already available in the book which you are using. Atmabodha, it has an introduction, it has a glossary. The glossary has all the Sanskrit terms which have been used in the book and the English meanings of those terms. And the specific meanings of these four, Vivek, Vairagya, Shat Sampatti and Mumukshutva, are there on pages 42 to 45 in the introduction. So we already discussed this in the first class. Please go through it again. That's why I wanted all of you to read the introduction thoroughly. Please go through it. It will become very clear. Vivek has been so beautifully introduced as philosophical discrimination. So like this, you will find very precise meanings already in this book. Please go through it. So with these two questions, I would like to end this session. Time is almost up. We will have a short prayer and we will meet again next Saturday. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhaga Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.